Hello, and welcome to another episode of Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. Today, we are continuing our updated version of Eris Mourn. I guess it's not updated. I guess it's just the continuation of her story, what she's been up to since our previous series that we did a very long time ago. We are now on part 5. We're last time we started looking into the period of time of Destiny Season of Arrivals, when the Black Fleet started to show up and we were getting messages. And the book we've been doing is The Singular Exegete. I had Myth look up the meaning of that, and we now understand we have been pronouncing it wrong. But we're going to continue to pronounce it the way I want to pronounce it because I like it. But we did look it up, and it's a messenger, or no, sorry, Myth. It was interpreter. Is that what it was?
Yes, interpreter.
And specifically of like scripture.
Yep.
So very befitting for Eris to be the interpreter of these little one-word passages that she had been receiving. Or I guess not just her. Obviously, it was meant for all of us. But anyway, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to go right back into the book. Myth, take it away. Take us in there.
Yeah. So last time we read through kind of the first half of this lore book, ending on Eris kind of having some internal struggles around, like, because the last chapter and message she got was just the word yes, was like an affirmation. Almost she interpreted that as like, maybe I'm doing what the darkness wants me to do. Maybe it's approving of my interest. Should I actually be doing this? Can I live up to like dealing with this power? And she kind of reaffirms her resolve by the end of the chapter, being like, okay, yes, I'm not going to give up my work. um I'm going to keep doing this. Funny enough, she says, until I have fried rice with pineapple and raisins. uh
Yeah. I'm still amused at the fact that pineapples don't. I guess they just don't exist in the
yeah,
future.
I guess there aren't any climates they have explored that are
But
conducive to them,
but that's the thing. But pine still exists, and apples still exist.
because they knew what those were.
She knew what those two were and tried to
Yeah.
combine those two. And was like, wait a second.
Yeah. So but yeah, so that was the last chapter we read. We're going to pick up right after that with this next chapter, which is entitled, and therefore the message that Eris received is the word unborn. And it starts with her report to the Vanguard on this message, that report being, it preaches the philosophy of the books of sorrow, yours, scriptures, and the unveiled fragments. The traveler is a false creator, guarding its creations with false law. We are dead things, made in the shape of the dead. The only true law is a violent winnowing. Whatever cannot hold on to existence does not deserve existence, and so forth. At least it is consistent. And then her own personal notes below, saying, the enemy suggests that our rebirth was an evil mistake. How Gnostic. They were a cult, a fleet, a school, a horde, who believed that the source of all suffering was not in our poor choices, but an error of the world's creator, a false, deluded god. Mara would laugh or weep. Was my rebirth an evil? Is it true that guardians are reborn to face pain? We are endlessly besieged by a tortured cosmos. Secretly, I believe that most of us fall to exhaustion. Our ghosts love us and let us curl up inside to rest. My ghost, Bria, died to save me. If she were returned, would I want immortality again? I do fear immortality without choice. I would not want to go on as a prisoner in Vex glass or a spirit trapped in the sea of screams. But my life is not a prison or a trap. And below, emphasized almost with deeper scratches to write this last line. That line just states, "It is not," meaning not a prison. And that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah, so the her message to the Vanguard, I like what she's talking about here, like the the darkness, talking about the books of sorrow, your scriptures, unveilment, the unveiled fragments, which the book of unveiling is what that last one, the unveiled fragments. Do you remember when that book was released? Was that book did that book come out after Season of Arrivals, or was that with Season?
Let's look, because that is a very good question.
Because I know, like,
Um,
obviously, Books of Sorrow and your scriptures, like, we would have had access to all of that stuff before. Though your scriptures, well, yeah, because we would have had access to Thorn in D1, so all of yours um, rantings would have been known to at least Eris. Maybe not us, the player character, but for sure Eris. The Books of Sorrow, obviously, we found all of that through the calcified fragments when we went through Oryx's ship
mhm.
back in D1. But I was curious on the unveiled portion.
Yeah, so Unveiling actually came out with Shadowkeep, so well
Okay, so
before
this would have
this.
been. Yep. Okay, so yeah, so this was definitely so like, all this stuff, public knowledge at this point. Then, um, but the darkness is kind of preaching this stuff, and at this time in Destiny's history, we still had this understanding of like the darkness was like one thing. We still didn't have a name for it. Like Savathun started preaching as the witness and stuff like that, and but we still hadn't had any name for it. So all we
Yeah.
had was the idea of the winnower and the gardener, and then of course that all of that was put out there was the idea of the sword logic and the winnowing. You know that if something cannot hold on to existence, it doesn't deserve to exist. So like if something died, it was supposed to die because that was its purpose in life, type thing. Um, and then she kind of muses there, like it may be crazy, but at least it's consistent.
Yeah.
Like good job, darkness. And then like her philosophy here on that, like her reflection on that, I she brings up some very interesting things too, like uh, talking about how the darkness suggests that the rebirth of the guardians of the ghosts coming back and bringing people back is evil. Like that thing died. Humanity died. It should be dead. Like it was winnowed. It was out of existence. That was its purpose. So for it to have been brought back, that suggests that the traveler is doing an evil thing, um, going against the sword logic, and then it but it's the second part here, the cult or whatever, the Gnostic. I again, I'm not familiar with who or what that is, but they had a belief that the source of all suffering was not in our poor choices but in error of the world's creator. So again, thinking of that being applied to the traveler and the ghost, like we as guardians are suffering, but it's not our fault. Like it's the fault of uh the traveler. Like so we're stuck in this cycle of death and rebirth because we didn't have a choice. Um but then for her to go on and to face, kind of give it more life there, saying that it's true, guardians are reborn to face pain, and that we're kind of stuck in that endless tortured cosmos, but not really. Like, I mean, she even says it herself, her ghost died to save her, and therefore she's no longer mortal. But then musing on that, of thinking of, well, if she was returned, would I even want to be immortal? Like at that point in time, I'd be given a choice. Um, but then for Eris to then come back and be like, no, 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 my life is not a prison or a trap, and it's almost like she's trying to convince herself of that with the
Yeah.
last little like, it is not like who are you trying to convince, Eris?
Yeah, some interesting ideas here, and knowing what we know now about the witness and their main goal to like give purpose to what they consider a purposeless universe.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think in a lot of ways the witness would view. I don't know that the witness honestly subscribes to sword logic in the way that the hive interpret it.
I don't think
Um,
so either.
I think they used the idea of sword logic as a means to grant purpose to things that didn't have any.
Sure.
And because that's their whole thing. That's their whole goal is give a very direct and finite purpose to everything that exists in the universe. So, and in their mind, that means everything is happening for a reason, and that is correct and good. Uh, and to them, if something dies, the reason for that death is because they didn't either they didn't have a purpose to fulfill, their purpose was already fulfilled, or the fulfillment of something else's purpose required that death. And to like undo that is to undo that purpose in a way, which is very antithesis to what the witness is all about.
Right.
um and so the idea of like these things died, they fulfilled their role in whatever this grand scheme is, and then for the traveler to be like, nope, they're back, uh, is a very like sacrilege thing to the
Yeah.
witness. And the Gnostic uh, reference there. So that is in reference to a particular belief system, Gnosticism, which is the belief that human beings contain a piece of whatever the divinity is that created everything. Um, the Gnostic belief is that, like, when that divinity created things, um, they put a piece of themselves into everything they created. And you can kind of see some relation between that
Yeah.
and like the traveler and the ghosts and
With
like
the light and stuff. Yeah.
right, bringing people back via the light. So there's some comparisons there. uh and yeah, Eris, like you said at the end, is kind of like, I will not be a prison to myself.
I think it's I think it's kind of funny. Like, who is she trying to convince?
Right, yeah. uh but no, so that brings us on to the next message she received in the next chapter, which is just titled Purity. And her message to the Vanguard in relation to that says, this logograph suggests purification through reduction, ablution, or sacrifice. It may draw an ironic comparison between the Taken and our own relationship to the Traveler. I'm sure the idea that we are light taken is a popular heresy, but the difference should be plain. We do not lose the capacity to choose. We make our own fate. And then her personal notes underneath, which say, the translation is not as clear as I suggested to Zavala. As I told my friend, purity is hardly pure of meaning. There are many interpretations. As a student of hive lore, purity makes me recall the final shape, that which remains when all that can be removed has been removed. But the hive are a skeletal cult of misery and reduction. The true enemy is rich with nuance. It challenges me. Why does the traveler strip us of our old identities? As a guardian, I never craved a past. Everything I cared for was in front of me. I could see my people. I could touch them. I could fight for them. But when I lost my ghost and the light, trapped in the gunpowder tunnels of the disemboweled moon, I cursed the traveler. It left me no childhood memories to comfort me, no parents or cherished friends waiting in the city, no one to whom I could devote my return. Just Ariana, Sai, Omar, and Vel haunting me. Of course, I have never considered this before. There is a more generous interpretation of the traveler's amnesia. The traveler believes that if we are freed of our past wounds and fears, given power and a new start, that we will choose to be good. We will abandon all lesser causes to defend humanity. We will choose others over ourselves. Perhaps this is why the traveler never speaks. Its voice is too loud to be anything but coercion. It waits, breathless, for us to make our own choice. And then a small space, followed by another scribble underneath that says, Anina's ghost sent me a message. She found viable pineapple seeds in an archaeology vault. She wants me to grow them. And that's the end of that chapter.
Oh, that's super sweet. Okay, well, let's take it from the top of this one then. Right off the bat, that idea of us being a light taken, it's, it's more spot on than I realized.
Yeah, in a
Like,
lot of ways.
again, the main difference being, we make our own fate because we have like any taken that we come across in the system are, I guess, inherently paracausal because they are taken. They're taken by the dark, so they have no they have no will. Like, part of being taken is like your will is you're stripped of your will, you're stripped of your identity. Like, you are just a drone at that point. We as light bearers are kind of the same. We're stripped of our old identities, but we're not stripped of our will. We have that capacity to choose. We can make our own fate. But very very similar. I really like that idea of
Yeah.
us just being light taken.
And in some ways we're stripped of our past, but we're also I don't know that it's like removed so much as suppressed.
Sure.
Knowing what we know now, we know that it's possible to get it back
Yep.
via um you know Crow getting all the memories of Aldrin from Savathun, as well as we'll actually do this reading in an episode prior to Final Shape, but there's an investigation that the Vanguard do into the reflection pool in Savathun's throne world, and there's a guardian as part of that investigation that uh, memories, suppressed memories, are brought back by it.
So it is just a suppression then. It's not a full like brain wipe.
I think so. And we also know that personality traits continue.
Right.
Like, again, Aldrin and Crow show very similar personality traits, very similar kind of compasses of like adventure and being that kind of smooth talking, roguish character. Just one of them, one path as Aldrin led to the Black Garden, which seems to have twisted things for him from there on. And the other path is Crow, which didn't have some of the pressures Aldrin did and had very different life experiences that shaped who we know them to be in the game now.
Right.
But still, some of that underlying, like, just the pieces that make them who they are from a personality standpoint and like just habits and things are still there.
Yeah. Well, and again, like it's I See, and that's where I think it comes back to that idea of suppression. Like, if it was
Yeah.
completely wiped, then like all that personality stuff wouldn't be there. But it's just suppressing memories themselves, rather
Yeah.
than like complete wipe, complete brain wipe. Because then like how would we know how to talk when
Right.
we were raised? Like if we were raised as just like a brainless thing, like we would be a taken drone. Like we would just be a nothing, an empty shell following orders. But but the light very much definitely. I think the light very much wants us to have that ability to choose, just by nature of the light. Like it wants to see, will we choose good? Will we choose evil? Are we inherently good? Are we inherently evil?
Yeah, and I think that is a important nuance. That it's in other lore readings, and I think just generally people have seen the community has seen like guardians being raised as something being taken from them. Those old memories are removed, they're taken away by the light. And I think what you said is spot on, and kind of what Eris is pointing to. It's not that its intention is to take away the previous life. It's that its intention is to allow us to choose without any prior bias.
And well, and she says it even further down here too. Perhaps this is why the traveler never speaks. Its voice is too loud to be anything but coercion. Like if you were brought back in this by this almighty being, this deity that just brings you back to life and is like, okay, hey, come worship me, and you're like, okay, I like you brought me back to life. Why wouldn't I worship you?
Yeah.
Like it's I like that idea of like it is silent because it just wants to see what happens. And again, thinking back to the unveiling books, like that's very much what was told to um, uh, the witness through those books, was that the winnower put paracausality in the universe, but didn't want to interfere with it. Just wanted to see what would happen. So then puts itself in and just as an observer.
Yeah. I do think that's probably a big part of why the travelers never communicated with us directly, because any any communication would be taken as like a message from God, essentially.
Exactly. And then we'd have a whole nother, like, I mean, we had the cult of Osiris going for a while, and that was just one dude talking. If
Right.
this is a deity that's been rezzing people left and right for, you know, what, 10 years, 10,
Yeah.
15 years or so, like probably, I don't know, no, more than 10 or 15 years.
I mean,
I'm
in
thinking,
game, lots of time, but
right, but like hundreds of years,
yeah.
like pre-city age, like back to the back. Well, and that brings up another point too. What was it? Uh, the idea of that the Eris says it here. The traveler believes that if we're freed of our past wounds and fears, given power and a new start, we will choose to be good. We will abandon all lesser causes to defend humanity. We'll choose others over ourselves. In the beginning, that wasn't true. We had
Yeah.
warlords. We had the risen.
Mhm.
We had evil fucking people that were just like, I'm a god. I'm gonna run around killing and pillaging and destroying everything around me. Like, why wouldn't I? I can wield lightning bolts and shit. Like, why would I not do that?
Right.
So it's again, but it's that choice. After so many cycles, and again, maybe that's just. It's funny to think of like evolution happening amongst guardians, like
Yeah.
they
I
they've been
mean,
risen and evolution happens, right? Like there's all this warring and like I'm just going to take land, and eventually you kind of like start getting a governance going, and we kind of like settle back into these roles of like, okay, maybe we don't need to be running around killing each other and killing off people, and maybe there is a bigger threat out there that we need to be worried about.
well, and even in the dark ages, the original like years of the risen, people like the fact that the traveler has given people that choice by nature of it being a choice means that they can choose to be good or bad.
Yeah,
So I don't think that the warlords and whatnot being around was a miscalculation or anything by the traveler. I think it's just like yeah, there are going to be consequences of people being able to make this choice. And in the end, one side or the other of that choice is going to prevail over the other side.
It's funny because that's almost sword logic.
In some ways, yeah. Uh,
Good
but
will
I
prevail over
think
bad, right? Like
I
that's
think the difference I think the difference is that the travelers and maybe not the traveler directly, but the light in general, the gambit here isn't necessarily that one side will kill the other. It's not that
sure,
only one
sure.
side can exist and the other must cease to exist. It's that the philosophy of one will end up prevailing as the more beneficial for everybody. And that doesn't mean that some people that don't have that philosophy, there were warlords that were evil pieces of shit that were killed. But there were
Yeah,
other warlords that did not great things that over time their philosophy changed and they came to be in line with the other guardians. Look at Shax,
I
for
was going to say
example.
hashtag Shacks.
Yeah. Uh so like there are whereas sword logic is like only one side can exist. Uh, I think the light is more, only one side will be beneficial, but it can be beneficial while the previous side's members still exist if they themselves change and become a part of it.
I like it.
Another interesting thing, going back to the whole light taken idea, um, thinking about the real the taken, knowing that darkness is all mental energy, is all psychic energy. I I wonder if it's not necessarily that the taken are being. I don't know. I don't know that it's functionally like they're being reduced to brainless things. They're being reduced to like whatever their will is, whatever their top priority as a being was, is overwritten by whatever took them. Like it's this idea of, let's say Oryx takes
Okay,
a cabal.
sure.
Uh because of how the darkness works, I see that not as Oryx like wiping the slate clean necessarily on that cabal and stamping it with an order and it goes and follows that out. Functionally, that might be how it appears, but I think what's happening in practice is Oryx is his mental capabilities are so much stronger than that cabal's that the cabal
Ah,
has no like is linked to him almost in a way, and it will always have the same motivations that Oryx does because Oryx's motivations are so much stronger than its, so it's overwriting whatever the thought pattern of that cabal was.
so I'm curious if there's a suppression happening there too.
Right, like
Can
could
something be
something be
untaken?
untaken?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Maybe. I mean, we
Maybe.
we know when they're leaderless, they just kind of wander
They just drone
on.
out. Like they really
Yeah.
do like just drone out. They don't do anything. Like all the and that's I guess that's the interesting thing too is the power to take died with Oryx.
Well, yes and no. Oryx is the last person we have confirmation that was able to take, but supposedly he learned that from the witness.
Oh, sure, 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 sure.
So I
I'm
would assume the witness can
is
also do
can still
that.
take well, and we even see evidence of that in the garden, um,
Right. Yeah.
when we're going after the machine gun when
Yep.
we're following Ronan, because there's taken in there at that point, and it's like why would there be taken in the garden? Like
Because
that
yeah.
seems odd for that to be there because again, when we look at paracausality in the garden, the only time it was there was with the Black Heart, and we went through the whole thing with that when we talked about the Vex. But for there to be actual taken there, like we assume that to be like the witness is like cleaning house. It's like
Yep.
like it did something, and then realized that we were starting to uncover like, hey, there's more to this than the witness than what's presented to us in front of us. And the witness is like, oh nope, can't have them finding that out, and just starts trying to wipe us out as fast as it can and wipe all the evidence out.
Yeah. So no, some very interesting ideas presented there.
Well, and one last one here, and I don't know why this bugs me. One, two, three, four. Yeah, she doesn't mention of her original fire team, Toland.
Well, I have to imagine it's probably because she blames Toland a little bit, like because
Maybe.
I would have to go back and see exactly what she saw, but if I recall correctly, Toland, like, they got down, they got into the Hellmouth, or at least the group of them did. I think one or two died just trying to get into it.
Right.
Um, and as far as I remember, Toland like essentially told them like, "Good luck, I'm out," and
I'm
just
pretty sure that's right.
wandered his way to where he was wanted to go down there.
Because
And
he very
very
much was
much,
there under just like I'm a
yeah,
warlock. I'm gonna study shit. I'm gonna do the warlock thing. Like the fire team is here just because for whatever. Like
he
yeah,
needed
they got me
someone to get him in, like, is
right to
what
get
it
in the front
was.
door, and then past that, it's like okay, I don't give a shit about you guys anymore. Very selfish warlock.
Yes. Very, very obsessive with hive magic, specifically like the death songs, if I recall correctly, from the Death
Right.
Singers and such. So
No
I
warlock is ever obsessed
imagine,
over anything to the point of like creating a cult around them or anything.
no, of course not, never. Uh, so I imagine she doesn't include them there because she sees him as like he's the reason, one of the reasons they were all in the situation they were in.
Like maybe if they'd had a little bit more, maybe if they had a well or something, maybe they would have survived. I don't know.
Uh, but yeah, so plus we know he's still kind of floating around. So,
This is true.
but that brings us to the next chapter and the next word. So that being conviction. And the report that Eris sends to the Vanguard is very short. It just says, "The enemy is convinced of the rightness of its cause. Uninteresting." And then the personal notes down below are much longer and say, "I saw a strange ghost yesterday, lurking among my supplies. Normally they do not come this close, even when their guardians do. They fear possession by the pyramid. But this one had an air of a spy. The enemy warns me of great atrocities couched in valor, violence born from supreme conviction. This message is an extension of the camouflage logograph, a warning against my own comrades. Sometimes death does not come from a disease, but the body's immune reaction. Under pressure, oxygen becomes poison. Good things, Mara says, can make us sick. Zavala is not a marionette. He is a strategist. His guardians are all tacticians. They love when some grand new threat appears, but when it is defeated, they become restless, and they use their bold victories as proof that Zavala is a timid leader. But he is not swayed by the hot-blooded elite. He fears victory disease. What will happen when our mighty newborn guardians, accustomed to swift victory, meet a grinding, tedious foe? And he worries for the thousands and thousands of weaker light bearers who rush after their heroes and die forever. No more ghosts are being created. We are pouring from a shallow cup. He would do anything to protect the last city. Such is his conviction. Would he kill me if he thought I was turned? I think it would wound him horribly, but he does love to be hurt by his duty. Another space before continued scrawlings. Anina returned with the pineapple seeds. Io does not support agriculture, so I made a loam out of treated soil, asteroid powder, and a bacterial paste that looks like bouillon. I will plant the pineapple seeds in this little garden. I hope their roots are not too big. I have only a little room to grow. And that's the end of that one.
I'm pretty sure pineapples grow on trees, right? I'm not crazy, right? Like that's a pineapple plant isn't just like a bush or something, right?
This is a good question. I've never really
I've
thought
never thought
to
of
look
a
into it.
pineapple plant, right? I
Uh,
don't know why this is like messing with my brain a little bit.
no,
I'm pretty sure it's a full tree.
it very much appears to be a bush.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Well, okay.
yeah.
Maybe she does have enough room. I don't know.
I don't. They are
Anywho,
prettle big. Like,
right. It's not like a little like you know. Well, I mean, if she's got enough soil to make a little like planter, yeah, that should be enough. Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah, she'll get a pineapple or two out of it. Yeah,
one way
I
to
like
find
it.
out.
Exactly. I'm so enthralled with the pineapple story that's happening with all of this. Um, anyway, okay, so conviction, pretty straightforward. Like it's enemies convinced they're doing they're righteous. That their cause is just. Like they are the correct one. Okay, cool. Like we get it. She very much kind of like shrugs it off. Like, cool,
Yeah,
we get it. Darkness. Like you think you're right and we're wrong. Whatever. You're not helping anymore. Um, but then the idea of this ghost, right? So, um, this she found the ghost lurking amongst her supplies, and it's weird that it would have the air of a spy, and um, it's almost like the darkness is trying to like plant doubt in her.
yeah.
And again, through this whole book we saw different things, right? Like in the beginning it was like, give up the light, it's bad. And then it's like, if you don't give up the light, we're going to come get it from you. And it's like, okay, fine, whatever, do whatever you want. Like it's going through those different stages, right? And now it's starting to like at this point now it feels like it's trying to plant doubt just for the sake of planting doubt, of like anything the darkness can do to be like, look, you're on the wrong side, I'm on the right side, you need to join me. And then she goes into the whole talk of the idea that death, sometimes death does not come from the disease itself, but from the body's reaction to it. And I love her example here. Under pressure, oxygen becomes poison. She's talking about oh god, I can't, the
The
bends.
bends. Yeah.
Yep, when you're coming up, when you've been underwater for so long, if you come up too fast, the oxygen in your body boils, I believe, and like you die. So you have to like depressurize as you're coming back up, which I believe would be the same. I believe that'd be the same effect in space, right? Because
Yeah.
space outside of the atmosphere there's no pressure out there. It's all
Yeah, going from high pressure to low pressure rapidly, I assume would cause
well, and going from
something
any
similar.
pressure. So like I know our atmosphere is approximately 15 pounds per square inch. To go from 15 to 0 is still a rapid change. So I would assume that would be enough to do the same thing. Anyway, um, but yeah, uh, to go into the idea of like what Zavala's, I guess, philosophy is, like his like way of life is, saying he's not a marionette, like he's not there to like tell people what to think or anything like that. He is strictly a strategist. He is the commander. He's the vanguard commander. He's a strategist. He's going to look at a battlefield and he's going to say, this is what I need, this is the supplies I need. He's going to look at everything very tactfully, and all of the guardians are they're all tacticians to him. And the big thing, the big thing she talks about, like when something big comes along and we defeat it, guardians get a little antsy and they're like, what's the big next thing? She's kind of like poking at us, the
A
players.
little bit, yeah.
Like okay, look, we gave you a big baddie, we gave you Oryx, and then you got all antsy, and we gave you Siva, and you're like, okay, cool, attack with that in 5 minutes, what's next? And you're like, okay, you little shits, like calm the hell down. Like the universe is a big place. There's a lot of places to go. There's a lot of places to look for threats from. Just be calm. Um, but the idea that Zavala is not he's not swayed by the hot blood elite. He fears victory disease. What will happen when our mighty newborn guardians, accustomed to swift victory, meet a grinding, tedious foe? Something that isn't just a quick one and done thing, something that has to be ran against. And then the follow up of light bearers who rush after their heroes die, that die forever, they're gone. Like all the ghosts that, and this is one thing that I think we've touched on it several times, but this is one thing I think a lot of us forget. Every ghost that exists right now are all the ghosts that have ever existed and that will ever exist. Every single ghost was created all at once, and yes, there's like, I mean, in theory, there should be at least 10 billion ghosts, right? Like that would be the thought. If it's like a one for one thing,
Yeah.
I'd say it's a pretty good estimation to say they're about 10 billion. But with more humans being born every day, like eventually there will be a point where there are more people than ghosts, that ghosts just fail to exist anymore. And she brings that up very poignantly of saying we are pouring from a shallow cup. Like they're very like we are rapidly becoming one-sided. Um, and then to follow that up with Zavala's conviction is he would do anything to protect the last city. The last city is everything to him. And then to like kind of think about it like, does that mean that he would kill me? Like if I was a poison, if I was the good thing that had become poison, would he do away with me? Um, yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
maybe. Oh man, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I agree. I think there's is a little meta going on here of
Yeah.
like, you know, I mean the what would happen if our guardians accustomed to a swift victory meet a grinding, tedious foe? Season of the Wish is what happens, or the last half of Season of the Wish is what happens.
we're very much at that point right now, and it's a little too on point.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying you have to log in every day, but just check in. Just a quick like, hey, how you doing, Mara? You good? Yeah, everything's good. Dragon's still dead? Yeah, okay. Eris, you good? Yeah. Zavala, Ikora, Shax. All right. Thanks. We'll see you. We'll check in on you next week. That's all. That's all. That's all she's asking.
But it is an interesting idea because they have done this thing where they have kind of canonized our guardians loot driven nature and just by and the sheer power that the player guardians have by
Yeah.
comparison to a lot of like non-player guardians.
I mean, we're taking down gods.
Right,
Like
like
we're actively killing gods left and right. I mean, we killed Savathun. Like as much as Savathun was just a light bearer. Like before she was a light bearer, she was a god. And granted, she kind of did herself in and then became a light bearer. And now we have to deal with the consequences of that. But we're still taking down God. We took down Rulk. We took down
mhm.
Oryx. Like I mean, we're taking down gods. We took down Zol. We took down a worm god. Like we we're pretty goddamn powerful.
Yeah. And to offer the thought that there are consequences to that, not just being like the two part. The first part being because we are so powerful and because it's been canonized that our guardian is these, bastions of what a guardian can be. This thought of like player guardians are like the celebrity and hero guardians that other guardians look up to
Yeah.
and try to aspire to be, and in doing so may put themselves in situations that they cannot survive. Is a repercussion that hadn't really ever hit me before. It hadn't really thought about before. Um, and the other being that like, okay, you have these absolute powerhouses that have defeated every foe that has ever come up against them, and they are built to sow death in our enemies. What happens when there are no more enemies? What
Right.
happened? Like the
What's
end
the big
goal,
chase? What's
the
the end
end,
goal?
right? Like the end goal of any kind of battle, warfare or whatnot is to win, with the assumption that there will be a peace afterwards. And it's maybe touching on things a little closely in the real world, but like after a war is finished, the soldiers don't just like stop. They're not just like, all right, back to citizen life. Like it's
I'm
hard.
telling you right now, that is hard as shit. Speaking from experience, that is hard as shit.
And she's alluding here, and I don't know that they would do this in game in any way, but she's alluding here to the idea of like, we don't know how these monstrous, powerful beings are going to handle not having something to point them at anymore.
Right. Because we've very much been that, like, hey, look, there's a thing over there that has loot. Go take care of it. And we just,
Yeah.
balls first, rush in, like, okay, cool. I'll throw myself against it as many times as it takes till it's dead. And then, like what you're saying, like what happens when that vacuum is gone, like, or when that's gone, it'll create this vacuum of like, well, what do I do next? Where's the next thing you point at? It's like, no, you can sit down and like play chess if you'd like. And like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to play chess. I want to go blow shit up. Like, okay, well, maybe play explosive chess with like nuclear war. No, don't do that. Don't do that's bad.
Shax's chess.
Yes, yes.
But so it's a very interesting idea. It's a very
I guess like, what is our conviction?
yeah.
What
And
is the conviction of a guardian?
I think that's another good question from this. Like, we as the, fourth wall breaking the players, like our conviction is we want to win. We want to, complete the raid and, finish out our bounty or finish out our collection or whatever it may be that drives someone, get to the top of, the leaderboards in PvP or whatnot. But it's posing that question to the players as well as the in universe character of like, yeah, what are you trying to get out of all of this? Which is a very interesting and deep thought experiment.
I don't like it, Smith.
Oh,
I feel like that means that like the obvious answer is that someday Destiny's going to end.
I mean, all good things, right?
I don't like it, Smith. I don't like it at all.
Well, we can put that aside and ignore it for the moment.
Good. Stick it in a box, shove it in the closet. We'll deal with that when it's next time to clean.
Yep. But that brings us to the next chapter and the next message, which is petulant. And Eris's message to the Vanguard in relation to this is a rebuke to Savathun for her interference. Perhaps she's jealous of our direct access to the pyramid. She led the hive to the darkness, but she has had eons to regret that choice. Could we exploit this? And just a note here, throughout this season, Savathun has been actively trying to disrupt our ability to receive these messages via Nokris, who's kind of like working under orders from her. So that's the interference that Eris is referring to. But then in her personal notes underneath, it says, I find the Guardians' collective study humiliating. Their channels are full of open speculation about me. Is she a hapless lackey of Queen Mara, an ancient proto-hive matron? And why did she offer to trade a bag of quartz chip data stores for a pound of breadfruit? Savathun, queen of all encrypts. Savathun, who has distorted these messages so badly that only the tenacious drifter can unscramble them. Why does the hive trickster want to prevent our contact with her god? Simplest answer? It's all a trick. You did exactly as I required, is her retort to any defeat. How can her plans be foiled when no one understands what they are? But would she dare defy the deep itself? Perhaps she would. Savathun's wretched existence is bound to the need to confuse. To understand her is to destroy her. Is she still set on luring us into a black hole? Some newborn universe where she can be a true god? Or was that all a lie too? Am I on the verge of some discovery that threatens her? Jupiter is always straight above. At night, the whole sky is afire. Tons of sulfur burning in the flux tube that connects Io to the Jovian pole. I burn my trash and the smoke drifts up forever. And the radio howls like wolves. And I find that I am lonely. And that's the end of that one.
Oh, it's kind of sad. Um. Okay. Well, let's start at the beginning. Okay. So her message to the Vanguard, just saying about the word petulant. It's almost like the darkness knows that Sabbath. I feel like it's not like the darkness knows. The darkness absolutely knows that Savathun
Oh, yeah.
is screwing with this. Like it has to. There's no way that the darkness wouldn't be. And in this instance, when I say the darkness, I'm just talking. I guess at this point, this would still be the witness primarily,
Believe so, yeah.
as like commander in chief of all pyramid ships and darkness forces.
Well, and we know from I forget what the season was technically called now, but the season that dropped with Lightfall. We know that all of the pyramid ships are in a way like a piece of the witness.
Right. Right.
So yeah, if
Season
these
of
are,
Defiance.
I think that was the Defiant. Yeah, but we know then that these messages are seemingly coming from a pyramid ship, so like
Therefore,
it's
should be from
him,
the
yeah,
witness. Yep.
or
Okay.
it.
Yep. They.
It is a collective, so
It is a
yeah.
collective, so I guess the proper pronoun would be they. Okay, so anyway, so she's looking at this and you know as kind of like the darkness like shaking their finger at Savathun like you naughty petulant child like
Yeah.
get the hell out of here, quit interfering with this shit. But then she likes it, like she likes the idea like you know can we exploit this, like can we,
Yeah,
is there something we can do?
if there's division between the
Yeah.
witness and Savathun, like maybe that's an opportunity for us.
I mean, that's how you defeat a powerful foe, right? Like especially in a military situation. Like if there's any type of doubt or dissension among the ranks, like if you can drive a wedge into it and get it further and further and further apart, and eventually break it down, now you're dealing with smaller factions, and even those factions might start infighting and stuff like that. Then it's not your problem anymore. Then it's like, okay, well I've dealt with like they're fighting themselves over there. That's no longer my problem. I'm no longer a threat to them, and I can just go on existing. Um, but yeah, so that idea of like maybe Savathun is jealous of us, maybe, um, and she hits the she hits it on the head a little too obviously throughout this whole message. She led the hive to darkness, but she had eons to regret that choice. Oh yeah, 100%
Yes,
regrets that
very
choice. Like we
much
know
so.
that now. Like she wants nothing of that. Like she wants to be free of everything, free of the light, free of the dark, free of everything. Um, so yeah, that was a little too on point there to think of that one. Um, I do like how she talks about herself through the eyes of the Guardians of like both herself and Savathun, right? Like the Guardians collective studying of her, not just her, but her initially, of like, is she a lackey of Queen Mara? Is she an ancient proto-hive matron? I like to think of her in that one. Uh, why'd she trade a whole bag of courtship data stores for just a pound of breadfruit? What is wrong with her? Like, is she crazy? Is she not, like, what is going on over there? And then Savathun, like, Savathun is the queen of all encrypts. Like, her whole thing is to be misunderstood. Like, and then later on she says, to understand her is to destroy her. If you could, Savathun will say shit just to screw with us. The whole thing, like, if we defeated her, oh well, you did exactly what I wanted you to do, and you're like, but you're bad. Like, I was supposed to defeat you, and she's like, yep. And then you're just like, well, now I'm confused, and she's like, good. And that's that. She's then won. Like, just any type of misunderstanding. Again, we started to think of it as like she's the god of trickery and deceit and stuff like that. But it's more than that. It's different than that. She's very much the god of misinterpretation, misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And we saw that through her message through the thrall of like, if a thrall can't understand your thing, then you're doing good.
It does bring a funny image to mind for me of like, kids when they play pretend or whatever, and they're like, okay, you're the good guy and I'm the bad guy or whatever. And, one of them would be like, well, I shoot you with my laser beam. And the other would be like, well, I have a laser beam repellent shield. They're like, you're just making shit up so you don't lose. Like that's the idea that I get
Sure
with
as hell am.
Savathun of like, well, you did exactly what I wanted. Like, are you sure you just don't want to admit that maybe we got one up on you?
I think that's what it is. I think you're right. I do like that idea. And again, going back to the petulant child, right? Like, this card is petulant. Like, Savathun is like the queen of petulousness, right? Like, well, I hit you with a laser beam. Nuh-uh, my hand was on base, and I've got a laser beam repellent shield. You're like, what base? What are you talking about? Like,
you're just making up rules now. Yeah,
you're just making this shit up. So yeah, it's again, that's it. But it plays to her strength. It plays to her worm. Like, that's exactly what she wants. So yeah, like again, everything through this, Eris is really hitting all these points just on point. Would she the one question that I find interesting too? Would she dare defy the deep itself? Like, we know now, absolutely she would. She hates it. Like, she doesn't want any part to do with it. But at this point in time, it's like, would she? I mean, I don't know. At this point in time, it'd be questionable if she would actively defy the deep. Like, if the deep were to tell her something, she would just turn around and be like, no. I think she would do it covertly. I think she would do it the way she did do it, where she would create that idea of like, well, hey, I have devotion. I devoted myself to the darkness. I have bravery. I self-sacrificed. Look at me. I did all the things. Like, I checked the box and all this stuff. Will you see me now, traveler? And in that whole scene where she like pulls the ice shard out of her side and dies. And it would have been like such a fitting point of the traveler to just be like, okay, I see you. Now go away. Like, if the traveler hadn't rezzed her, just been like, good, like, you screwed up. Like, we were going to come help you. And that was the whole big lie in the first place, right? Was the idea that the traveler came to Fundament to help the Krill, was originally going to give the Krill the light. And it was just another planet on the path leading to the soul system eventually, right? Like, that big deceit, that big lie, for the darkness to know that and then use it against them and tempt them first and be like, hey, we can give you immortality. We can make your people live forever. We can make you the mother figure. We can make you the god of knowledge. We could make you the god of war. Like, to give these to these three sisters, and then for Savathun to finally see this eventually. And the whole if I'm remembering correctly, the whole time they're leading down, Savathun is kind of questioning it, talking to her father's familiar and all that stuff.
I think at that time, again, I'd have to go back and reread to be for sure, but I'm pretty sure at that time she's kind of the driving force that keeps them going.
Okay, I remember it.
She's definitely one of the first to start questioning after everything.
Yep, because I remember her like saying like, no, we're on the right path, we're doing the right thing. But then I remember another entry where she's like, are we doing the right thing? Like, I don't
Yeah.
really freaking know. Like, maybe we're not. I don't know. So yeah. So again, it's just it's a lot of this is just too on point. Is
Yes.
Eris knows exactly what's going on here too.
Yeah, it's interesting also to think that when Savathun had her worm, really all that was needed, and I make it sound simpler than it is, of course, but really all that was needed was for somebody to perfectly define every truth, like every deep down truth about Savathun, and she would have just died, essentially. Like
I
it,
never even thought of it from that point of view. Like, we really could have just defeated her if we could just understand her.
right.
But then the second she says something to like retort,
It
that's just a
confuses that
millisecond of
further of
confusion.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's an interesting idea of like, could anyone ever actually understand her to that depth? But if they could, presumably the instant they did, she would just shrivel up and be gone.
Yeah.
Like,
But
because
now it's too late. Like, she's a light bearer
right
now. Like,
now it's not an option anymore.
she has immortality.
Yeah, a more true immortality than she had before.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's a point on to itself, right? Like, the darkness preaches about how immortality like, if you exist because you should, and you've killed everything around you. But even that thing isn't nothing in this universe is guaranteed as a permanence,
Right.
except for that one final shape.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because it preaches one thing and then, like, with an asterisk.
Yeah, with tiny little print down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I think from the witness's point of view, like the means justify the ends. Like
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
anything that is used as a tool to get to the final shape means that its purpose was to
Yep.
be a tool to get to the final shape.
Yep.
And everything that happened in between there, like those details don't matter as long as they get to that
Yep.
end.
Point A and point B. The beginning and the end is what matters. Everything in between is just fluff.
Yeah, as far as the witness is concerned. So, but no. So that brings us then to the next one, which is titled Camouflage. And this one, in the message to the Vanguard, Eris again keeps it short and sweet, saying, "Meaning unclear. Perhaps simply a threat. We are hidden closer than you know." In her personal notes underneath, she says, "Now I am hiding the truth even from my own friend. I do not want to make them distrust the Vanguard, but I am sure that this warning is genuine, and that it points to a threat in our own ranks. There are inflections to this logograph that speak of a killer hidden in plain sight. I must not become paranoid, as Sang Chuan did, but I think the warning is for me. I think the enemy wants me safe from my own kind, so that I will continue to receive its messages. And share them with my friend? Is that my true purpose? Am I only a conduit for their corruption? I am convinced that the absolute interdict upon knowledge of the darkness is misguided. We can understand the enemy without falling under its sway. If I can pass through darkness and return, so can others. Perhaps under my guidance. Perhaps I can be a teacher. Mara would be horrified if she knew, afraid for me. But my queen herself stole Oryx's power. Can communion with the Black Fleet be so much more dangerous? I planted the pineapples. They have already blossomed. The Golden Age agriculturists must have tweaked them for growth and hardiness. Little purple thistles that delight me. Anina asks after their health. I am suspicious of her. She is too eager to please. and who knows which faction that snooping ghost reports to. Was it hers? And that's the end of that chapter.
I'm telling you, man, sowing just a little deceit there. Just a
Just a little
little bit of
bit.
doubt, just to screw with Eris is just enough to. I don't know. I think Eris is smarter than that.
I think so too.
I like to think that.
And it's interesting because knowing what we do, I like the enemy is close. We are hidden closer than you know. I
Yeah.
guess that could be a couple things. Because at this point, Savathun has not taken over Osiris, so that there isn't that connection.
Right.
Um,
Well, and did that happen at the beginning of Beyond Light?
yes, because that's when Season of the Undying
Yep.
came
With
out,
Crow, with
or
the
Season of the
beginnings of.
Hunt. Excuse me, Season
Yep.
of the Hunt.
Season
Yep.
of the Hunt into Chosen. Yep. Yep. That would have been. Oh man.
So I guess maybe it's
Maybe
like
that is a threat.
a reference that is something that's
Like
going
that's
to
coming.
happen.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just that like, hey, Savathun is trying to find a way to get into your ranks,
Yeah.
um, which she would definitely want to intercept in that case.
Oh,
Uh,
because she wouldn't want us to.
right.
Savathun knows that we're intercepting and interpreting these messages. She wouldn't want us to know that the darkness is like warning. Is this really a warning from the darkness? Did the darkness literally just call out Savathun? Was like, "Hey, she's planning to take over one of your own. You need to look out for this." And she's like, nope, can't tell them that."
I mean, Savathun is kind of as much the darkness's enemy as ours at this time.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to believe the witness knew that she was actively working against him at that point.
Had to have. There's no way that, like, with all the power and grandeur that the witness has, there's no way. But I mean, you say that, and I say that, but then we look at the collapse. The witness was here, and it dropped
True.
its precious little veil, and I say dropped like as if it was like lost a contact lens. I keep referring to the veil as like a contact lens of the darkness or of the witness, and he like dropped it in the soul system, and then was like, shit, I must have lost it back at home, and then just like leaves. Like left the soul system, was like, that was the last place I had it. So clearly it's not there. Clearly it's got
Well,
to be back at the house.
we had talked about it before that like it's very possible he knew where it was the whole time and was retreated in a bit of a guise to like sit and let the traveler heal itself because he needed it restored
In order to go inside, yeah.
in order to enact his plan. So because he only started moving once that light wave went out, which
Yep.
was the traveler kind of being healed or waking
Awaking.
up, I should
Yeah.
say.
Oh, so maybe that then brings down another idea too. Like, did the traveler shut itself down on purpose? Like, if the traveler knew what was going to happen, if the traveler knew the darkness was closing in, the collapse is happening around it, systems are getting lost, Mara's booping into her own little universe, like the traveler looks at all this and goes, "Well, shit. The only way I can continue to go, or the only way I can keep this battle going, like, can I play the long game of like shut down into like full power?" Because again, we don't know what the traveler is.
Right.
I keep thinking of it in the sense of the great machine, right, from the Elixir's point of view of like it is a machine. It has a power source. It can turn that. If you shut that power source off, then the machine shuts down. It doesn't die. It's not living. Um, but yeah, like could it enter such a low power mode that like the witness can't do anything to it, and therefore now the witness can't do anything to it. So then it's like, well, shit, I can't. I need to retreat and regroup and kind of rethink my attack on this. And in that confusion, Savathun's like, yoink,
Yeah.
fails mine.
I think that could very well be part of it. And if we do think of it, even if we don't think of it as a machine, but more of a sentient being, because in Season of the Witch, um, Imaru says that like, hey, even though your ghost hasn't said this, the traveler is just screaming right now,
I remember that one.
like just endlessly screaming in
Yeah,
pain. So
not
that
cool.
the I and maybe he's attributing, you know something emotional to something mechanical. But if we take what he says at face value, then like there's at least the ability to feel that the
Sure.
traveler has.
Yep.
But I like the idea of maybe it was a conscious decision of like, okay, I, you know, the people I am protecting have no hope against this thing.
Yeah.
Have no hope against the witness and the forces of the witness. I know that it needs me intact. So if I disperse all of my energy out of me, the witness can no longer accomplish its goal. And if I can at the same time, two birds, one stone, if I can at the same time, through that dispersal, give these people the ability to maybe one day defend themselves from the witness.
Dude, that's a huge game. Did it just play the same gamble that Mara did?
Well, I guess what's the connection to Mara?
Mara's gamble of like she went up against the dreadnought knowing she's gonna die, and in order to slip into the Ascendant Realm, and then she gets in the Ascendant Realm, she's like, okay, now I have to just sit and wait and hope to
Yeah.
God that the Guardians can kill Oryx so I can get the hell out of here. Like,
In that way, yes, I think it's a very similar idea. The traveler's dispersal of its energy, aka the ghosts,
yeah, yep,
was like, all right,
the big
I'm
gamble.
I'm gonna sleep for as long as I can. A, because my power is now gone out into these little ghosts, and B, because I know as long as I'm powered down, the apocalypse can't happen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm an integral piece of the apocalypse, and therefore, if I sit on the sidelines and put my fingers in my ears, I'm not contributing.
Yeah.
Going la 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 la. You can't talk to me. You can't hear me. Like that's. I feel like that's what the Traveler did at the collapse, and it kind
Yeah.
of worked.
And that would make sense from a certain point of view as well. I know we're very off base with the lore happening
We did. I know. I kind
for
of
Eris,
jumped
but
topics a little bit.
but no, I think it's worth talking about. If we think about that from a timeline perspective, it makes a certain amount of sense. So Traveler disperses the ghosts with the idea of go out, create, give these people the ability to defend themselves from the thing that will one day come back.
Sure.
It powers itself down. The witness, I'm assuming, knows where the veil is. I know there's a scene in Lightfall where it like touches the traveler and gets the vision of it,
Sure.
but I don't think that's like it discovering. That might be it discovering its exact location.
I think that's more the
It's
thing.
on
Like
Niamuna at these coordinates, kind of
it
thing.
knew it was in the soul system, but it was like, well, because the Traveler powered down, there's no reason for me to go looking for it.
Right.
Like, I can't do anything about it right now, so I'm just gonna leave.
Right. So I think the witness
Kind of it like almost like it's ceding itself to the long game, right? Like
yeah, absolutely.
it's saying, okay, you want to play the long game? I'll play the long game right along with you. We're both immortal beings. We'll just what is time? Time is nothing to an immortal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
The
you want to
witness
play the
just
long
like,
game? I'll play the long game.
all right, I'm gonna go out and recruit, replenish my forces, do whatever is needed, and then I'm just gonna hibernate until I get something that tells me that the game is back on.
Yeah.
And the traveler's hand was forced with Gaul, like it had to take action against Gaul, so it did, knowing that by doing so it was going to
set that chain of events
off, because after it wakes up, the very next thing the traveler does that we see is it starts repairing itself.
Yep.
And again, that would make sense if it's like, all right, I know this thing is coming. I see that now that I have very powerful, capable defenders of the civilization. Now I'm going to start repairing myself to make sure that like I am in the top shape I can be for when all of this is going to hit the fan.
So it's interesting. It's almost like the again, kind of going back to the idea of like, what does paracausality do in a universe that never had that shouldn't have had paracausality, like all these other universes, going back to like the Garden game. creating all these universes that don't have paracausality, and then this thing introducing it and then saying, well, I need to monitor it, but I can't interfere with it, I can't touch it. But then the other side going, well, if you're going to stick it in there, I'm going to do everything I can to snuff it out. Like that paracausality shouldn't be there. So it started off as like a quick like, hey, don't do that, I'm going to do it anyway, and then turned into this war, this giant war of like, I have to snuff it out, everything, and then for it to fall. But again, kind of coming back to the witness, like, what, the witness was a people, it was a race of people, it wasn't the original winnower.
Correct.
And so for it to have the light at some point in time, it had eons of a golden age, and then for it to find the veil, and then like, I'm curious if it finding the veil was just like a trick of the darkness too, like the darkness going, oh shit, the darkness, the original winnower, going, oh shit, the gardener was right. If it puts paracausality in, then things will, I will lose the game finally. And it got jealous and was like, oh, well, here's the veil, and then introduced it to the people that had this, because I'm assuming the witnesses people were the original, that was the original golden age, like the first golden age of all time. You know what I mean?
And we're in a weird scenario there because we don't, for a couple of reasons. A, we don't know the exact relation between Traveler and Gardener, original winnower and veil.
Yep.
Like we don't know what the actual connections are there.
Yeah.
If those entities, if the Traveler and the veil are the physical representation of those beings, or if they're just tools used by those beings, or what.
Right.
And by Asa's account, the Traveler and the veil used to be one thing.
Yep.
So, but we don't know what happened to split them. All we know is that by the time the witnesses people literally dug up the Traveler in the desert, it was already separated from the veil, and they discovered the veil via this connection that they found between the two, some kind of energy link that they could follow from one to the other. Which, knowing that that's how they found the veil originally, makes a whole lot of sense as to how the witness was able to be like, yes, there's the veil. Because I've already done it once.
I've already done it once. I found oh shit.
They've already used that energy connection before.
To find it the first time. There's no reason why it shouldn't be able to just be like, oh, it's right there.
So I think 110%, the witness had no concerns whatsoever when the veil went missing, because it wasn't important to its plans now.
I feel like we had a bigger aha moment about the collapse than we did about anything else. And I know we did this in the middle of talking about Eris, but I'm sorry that that's the way this train got derailed, but I feel really good about this aha moment.
Yeah, I think so too. Like that makes a lot of sense to me. That does.
All that's to say is that Eris wants to be a teacher.
so yeah, going back to it, Eris did kind of get us on this ballpark about the whole, what is the darkness, and can we still use it? She fully believes, yes, we can understand the enemy and not fall under the sway of this corruption.
Because if she did it, then everyone else could.
Right. That's kind of her idea.
That's kind of her logic. Yeah. And the interesting thing, again, like she says, perhaps under my guidance. Now, I think she's thinking of a sense of like the darkness as a whole. My original thought was, is she wanting to be the original teacher of stasis? But I think it's because this is right before Beyond Light, but well after the events of Shadowkeep. So she has already touched the statue. Already had that kind of like taste of like, oh, I can use darkness. I can wield it as an ability. But still kind of questioning herself. And we talked about that through some of the earlier entries in this book too, where she touches on it, but she doesn't quite get there.
But, yeah, and I think maybe she's speaking a little more philosophically. Like, I can teach people not to be afraid of this. I can teach people how to have mastery over this and not lose themselves.
That it's a tool. It's not a it's not this all power. Like, it can be an all consuming, all powerful thing, but the light can be the same way.
Right.
And we've seen zealots of the light as well. So to think of it for her to be a teacher is like, this is just another tool in your toolbox. I like that.
Yeah, and to offer a little bit of meta commentary around this, I I I can't speak to exactly how true this is, but I would believe it. I remember seeing articles, and I don't remember exactly what the evidence was, but I remember seeing articles around Beyond Light's story, specifically the trailer that was Eris, Elsie, and the Drifter using stasis, which does show up in game.
Yep.
Um, and that originally, uh, that story was going to be much more focused on on all three of them, not just Elsie.
Oh, sure.
So like Eris and Drifter were going to play a much bigger role than they ended up playing in the final cut.
Almost like they were learning alongside us.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I
So
remember that
that
too.
this card may have been written at that time as well, with the expectation that Eris was going to be more of a teacher to us for Stasis specifically. Um, so
I do
yeah,
still like it as Elsie being the teacher again.
yeah,
With the what was it? Was it the books that came with Witch Queen, where she talks about how she eventually learned
yeah.
stasis, where she's like having
Through
that
her
time jump in
many
her.
lifetimes.
Yep. So yeah, no, I do like that it is Elsie as a bigger player, because again, she's more of the like, I've seen where these entities, and specifically Eris, like she saw where Eris was the first one to come to darkness, and that like started everything.
Right.
Every downfall of every future timeline was like Eris learns darkness, then succumbs to it, and we all get fucked from there.
Yes.
So for it to be Elsie to be like, no, let me be the teacher, let me be the. But even in those books, I remember like she even like learns it from herself, learning from Eris.
Yeah.
Like it's a giant time paradox of how Elsie even knows stasis. So yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah. So, but enough about that. We'll move on. The next chapter and the next message here is titled "Falling," and Eris's note to the Vanguard is another threat of imminent disaster. You declared a new golden age, and our enemy declares a second collapse. They imply it is already in motion. Alarming. And then her personal notes. Free fall is indistinguishable from a stable orbit until you strike the ground. Are we already falling? Is our doom fixed? Have I missed the signs this time? I should ask Osiris. I should ask Ikora. I should ask my queen. I should conjure wretched Toland from the sea of screams and wring the truth from him. But would I be believed? There goes old Eris, they will say, howling about fingertips and revenge again. She is lonely, so she prophesies doom. Zavala would believe me, but he would also call me in for rest. Ikora would set me in a library and take care of me, and I would be too glad of it to leave. I cannot. I cannot. Even my queen knows that some secrets must be kept in solitude. She will understand. She trusts me. I look forward to sharing a meal together. And that's the end of that chapter.
I had to giggle a little bit about the idea of free falling is indistinguishable from a stable orbit until you strike the ground.
Yep.
She's not wrong. What is it? Free orbit is just falling at the same rate that you're accelerating away. Is that what it is? You're falling at the same rate of forward acceleration. Therefore, you continue to fall, but because you're a pull. Anyway, I
You're
could
just
go into
falling
that.
in a circle.
Exactly. You're falling in a circle. That's all it is. And geosynchronous just means you're doing it at the same rate that the thing you're orbiting is moving in a circle. Everything is just circles, right? The whole world, everything is just orbits and circles. See, the traveler had it right. The pyramids are wrong. They're in
Yep.
triangles. We're in circles. There, justified all of destiny. No, no. Again, this idea of falling. Like, what does this message from the darkness even means? Like, do they, is it an endless cycle of like one begets the other, begets the first, begets the other. The idea of like we've declared a new golden age. Okay, well we're going to collapse it again, and then we're going to get another golden age, and then they're going to collapse again. Like, is that thing still just an endless cycle? Um, and then her idea, like, have I missed the signs of this? Like, are we all is she says is our doom fix, which I think she's applying that to just humanity or the soul system. But I'm curious if there's like a bigger meaning to that. Is the entire universe's doom fix? Like, will there always be this cycle of like light comes and creates golden ages, and then darkness comes and creates a collapse, and then there's this continuous thing? Because we see that throughout all of the areas that the travelers touch, even going as far back to the witness, right? Like
Yeah.
the witness finds it. It creates a golden age for him. They find darkness. Darkness collapses. They collapse in on themselves, create the witness. Traveler blips off into nowhere. Traveler comes to uh, um, uh, Fundament, tries to create a golden age, and is beaten to the punch, so runs off. Goes to the Ecumene, starts to create a golden age, and gets beaten away. Goes to Harmony, creates a golden age, creates the great I can't remember what it's called, the mast,
The gift mast.
gift mass. Hey, here's another idea to create golden age. Nope, bye, get out of here. Goes to Reese, finds the elixir, creates a golden age. Darkness comes, collapse, runs off. Like, we're seeing is this endless cycle of golden age collapse, golden age
Yeah.
collapse, golden age collapse. So it's interesting to think, like, is our doom fix applying that to the entire universe rather than just localized to the soul system? And then I love that. Should I ask Osiris? Should I ask Ikor? Should I ask my queen? Those would be good ideas. Should I grab wretched Tolan from the Sea of Screams and demand
Yeah.
it from him? But would anybody even believe her? Oh, there goes Eris, finger on the tips of my mind, and revenge, and prophecies of doom. That's what Eris is all about. So of course that's what they're gonna see. And then of course going back to Zavala, like he'd probably believe me, but then he'd tell me to like give it a rest and stuff. And but she knows that she can't give up this fight. Like, she can't.
Mhm.
Eris knows so much more than she's even letting anyone else on. And she says just as much. Even my queen knows that some secrets must be kept in solitude. And we know that about the queen. Like, the queen has secrets upon secrets. Like, we still have no idea what the grand plan that she set in motion to like go into the ascendant plane and then like have the guardians defeat and then her to come back and essentially be ascendant is like.
Yep.
Is Mara an ascendant now? Like, is she a Toland?
I think in a lot of ways, yes. In other ways, she's something unlike anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she created her own pocket universe by blipping light and darkness together, and then created all the rules in there, and then came out of that, and then went in with bomb logic against sword logic and hid inside the ascendant plane, and then came out and literally remoleculed herself back into existence. Yeah. We still don't know why. Like, why did she do all this?
We don't have a full picture for sure, but yeah. So this brings us to the next and final chapter of this book, which is titled Contact. And Eris's report to the Vanguard on that is, at last, another substantive message. The enemy's influence in our system may be more extensive than we realize. You must look for signs of its effect. Errors or crashes in Vex constructs, eruptions of empowered or self-destructive hive sorcery, newly created scorn, revels and expeditions by the worshippers of the narcissist emperor, referring to Callus. Her personal notes underneath say, "Our enemies are turning to the darkness. The Red Legion is broken, the Almighty destroyed. The remaining Cabal will either join Callus's death cult or seek his daughter, Keitel. And the fallen, we have driven them to the edge of survival, turned them against each other. How many will look to the whirlwind for an advantage over their rivals?" By pushing them from the light, we have groomed more supplicants for the darkness. We are in an arms race. If we do not learn to use our greater enemy's power, our lesser enemies surely will. I confronted Anina about the strange ghost. It was not hers, she protested. I asked her why she had been so generous to me, so eager to please. She confessed that she had come on behalf of her fire team, the guardians who are champions in the Drifters' strange games. They wish to learn the ways of the darkness itself, to descend into the underworld like ancient Inanna and return. They want what I have learned here. How easily they might be corrupted, and yet it thrills me to know that I would not be alone in my work. I sent her away. I fear the Witch Queen's spies. The pineapple blossoms are still growing, but now I stare at the purple flowers in the black soil, and I wonder about poison. I am no longer hungry. And that's the end of the book.
Poor Eris, always alone. Oh, poor Eris. Well, I'm glad this is more than just a cool Jodie Foster flick. Contact. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Ha
Yeah.
yeah, I had to sneak that in there. But yeah, so she just is a very direct message, just straight up. Hey, the enemy's influence in our system probably more extensive than even we realize. Like we are at like this being the last message. This is literally exactly what it means. Contact. Darkness is here. It's no longer a threat looming on the horizon. Like pyramid ships are starting to blip planets out of existence. Io being one of those planets that does eventually get blipped. Yeah, this is everything. And for her to say like, look, you need to look for everything. Errors or crashes in the Vex constructs because they can't understand paracausality, so it does just cause a crash for them. Uh, Eruptions of empowered or self-destructive hive sorcery, like things that would normally be looked at as oh, it's just a hive ritual. Now it's like they're sacrificing stuff for something bigger. Newly created Scorn, like Scorn had been around for a while now. What's been the end of 2 years of Scorn
Yeah.
being around.
Forsaken. Yep.
Yeah. So presumably all the Scorn that have been created are kind of like that's. I feel like the Scorn creation is the same as the Ghost creation. Like that's it because like why would they need to build more if they are kind of like us? They can just revive over and over again. And then the revels and expeditions by the worshippers of the narcissist emperor. Well, she really doesn't like Callus, does she?
No.
But yeah, the idea that and the one big one here too. Our enemies are turning to the darkness. The Red Legion, anything that was left of the Cabal as a whole, split into essentially what she said. There were two ways they went. They either everyone joined Callus, which I don't think as many joined Callus as what I think originally. I think a majority of them went to Keitel, and Keitel was like, "My father was wrong. Like, abandon that thought of that way of life. Abandon that logic. We are Cabal. Like, we drink the mountains, we eat the seas. Or sorry, we drink the seas, eat the mountains. Unless it was a frozen sea, I guess you could eat that.
Yeah.
Like shaved ice, right? Like, hey, you want a Pacific Ocean? No, stop it. Just the idea of like Keitel like taking a big old scoop out of the Pacific Ocean, going, "Hey, you want some Hawaiian ice?" But like the Cabal got split there too. But again, I think a majority of them stayed under the guise of under the command of Keitel, and followed her. And then the Fallen split hard. Like a majority of them, and again, the next time we see them is the next season after this, that being Beyond Light. We see they've all joined House Salvation, like House of Darkness. Like let's go. There are very little Fallen that are even looking to Mithrax for help of House Light, and we don't even see that for another like what 3 seasons afterward. We finally start to see some signs of light
Right.
from them. Keitel even comes to our doorstep and like offers us a seat at her table, but she's like under me though, and like Zavala, no, all stoic and stuff. Um, so yeah, like it by turning our darkness, our enemies away from the light, there is another power source in the universe, and that is the dark. And entities like these that we've come across, the Elixni, the Cabal, the Hive, if they can't get power from one source, they're going to get it from another. Like
Yeah.
that's just the way that their species have existed for eons. And
Well,
so and
and purely from a survival aspect too. Like
oh sure,
if they are in a system that the things they have to defend themselves against have these grand paracausal powers, then like from their point of view, that is required. You know,
yeah,
you have to at
you
least
have
be
to have
able
one
to.
or the other, like some type
Yeah.
of paracausality.
Yep.
You have to be able to use it or wield it in order to even survive. Yeah, no, I nail on the head. Uh, but yeah, it's that's a hard thing too. Like to think of like if I turn something away from the light and hoard it to myself, because humanity really has looked at that this whole time, right? Like the traveler is sitting above our skies. It's in our system. It's on our planet. Like the
Right.
traveler is ours. Like are we really helping ourselves by hoarding it to ourselves? And of course, now looking forward at again, this being the time of the rivals that this was written, and looking at what we're at now, we have an alliance. We have the cabal on our side. We have the fallen on our side. Like the stuff that's out there that we fight are like splinter factions. Like they're nothing. Like the big threat is I think the Hive and the Vex. But even the Hive has we've kind of, I'm going to put this in quotations, dealt with them. Like I think the Lucent Hive are probably the more prominent threat among the Hive, but even they, I think would still follow Savathun. If Savathun were to give them an order, they would follow. But again, you're talking about creatures that have been beholden to hunger for eons, for billions of years, and now they're given a choice, and the only thing they know is to choose hunger. Because again, with that idea of like, hey, I res something, but it has parts of itself, part of its driving force was hunger for so long that all it knows is hunger. And there, for some reason I remember there being a few lore entry cards of Lucent Hive being risen, and all they want to do is kill. They just run face first into something, and they don't even like give it a second thought or a second chance or anything like that. And then the ghost rising him and going, "Okay, hold on a sec, buddy. We got to talk this through." And the thing going, "No, hunger," and just runs in again, like doesn't even
Mm-hmm.
listen to the ghost that's right there in front of him. So again, I think that things like the Hive, all of those have been dealt with now, and we really are kind of at the point of like the Vex is still a threat, and I put that in quotations, but the Vex have always been a threat and will always be a threat. It's just a matter of time, and we're fighting like they are fighting the ultimate long game, right? Like Light and Darkness is like, oh well, I'll play the long game, and the Vex is like, I'll play the even longer game. Like I'm just gonna outlive both of you. Um, so yeah, so to think that all the forces there, they have to choose between one or the other, it's kind of depressing, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and then for her to talk about Inanna, and the fact that Inanna just straight up tells her like, yeah, we're trying to learn darkness. We are literally calls out the ancient Inanna, like the story that was told about Inanna. Like they want that, and it's like Eris sees that and is like, no, no, no. I don't think Eris at this point in time is confident enough in herself to be a
Yeah.
teacher. Not only from the point of view of like, can she physically do this? Can she mentally do this? Like, if someone were to fall to darkness and it's her fault, like, would she recover from that? Like, shoot, this Eris, I don't know. Beyond Light Eris, maybe. Like, Season of the Witch Eris, fuck yeah,
Yes.
dude. She would just nom 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 nom. Yes, Yeah, I like season the witch Eris. She kicks in doors and kicks in teeth and doesn't give a shit. Um, but she's still leery about this, and again, for her to, she's happy that she'd be alone. But then like that idea of like that the last two lines there, like the pineapples are blossoming, but now I'm curious, like, is a good thing poison? And she's all of a sudden she doesn't want to eat them now, like because they were gifted to her by Inanna. Like, what is wrong with them? Like, she's very hesitant now against them, which is kind of sad because I like pineapples and I think Eris would like them too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is interesting to see she's kind of in this like transitory state from a personality point of view where it's like she has all this information, she is feeling this like maybe I could be the teacher, maybe I could herald people into understanding this, and
Yeah,
by doing that also not be as alone anymore. Um because she has people that are interested in the work she is doing at that point. But then there's still that side of her that's like, no one would believe me, no one would trust me, I can't trust
yeah,
them. And it's as much as it's a fight, I say fight, quote unquote, between her and Inanna in this case, it's also like a fight within herself of
absolutely.
should I be allowed to have other people around? Can I allow myself that luxury?
Yeah,
And it is nice to see her go from that and grow into Season of the Witch, where it's like she has people that trust her implicitly. And that's the only reason why she was allowed to do her plan in Season of the Witch.
yeah,
Uh, so that has been a really cool, just kind of like comparison point between where she started and where she is.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It only took her what, 3 years, four
Yeah.
years, 4 years, 3 years, 4 years,
Well,
16 years. I don't know, however long she's been around since the original run into the Hellmouth.
personal growth takes some
There you
time.
go. It does. Um. Okay. Well, that's the end of that book.
Yeah,
Let's do some shout outs.
absolutely. So, we've got two shout outs that we're going to go over for this episode. The first comes to us from an Apple Podcast review, the very kind 5 stars. So, thank you for that. This coming to us from Steel Zealot, uh, who says, legit one of the best nerd out podcasts I've delved into. I'm a late addition to the D2 world. Lightfall was my pick back up after D1. I
Holy
never really
shit,
got into the lore.
dude! You
Now
got a
that I
lot to
have,
catch up on, buddy.
yes, now that I have found a lore outlet to binge, I literally cannot progress the mundane beer vendor life without an autopilot escape. I can't wait to be caught up. Love you
I
guys.
I have this image of this person so I used to work at a gas station, and we had the beer vendors come up, and so I have this image of this person in their little Bud Light smart car, because that's what they all had at, I think, at the time, were like little Chevy Sparks and Sonics and stuff. And I imagine this guy like just stop to stop, just like, okay, podcast, I'm going to listen to Destiny shit for an hour until I get to the next one, and just sitting in the parking lot, like just waiting, and just like, I can stretch this out for another hour. I can stretch this stop out for 2 hours. I like that image, and then being like, okay, now I have to go sell beer. Now I have to go, not necessarily sell beer, but like I have to process an order of like, oh, you're out by so many cases and you need this, and then be like, well, this is boring. All right, back to Destiny now. I like it. I absolutely love it, and thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. It is quite the leap to go from D1 right into Lightfall.
That was more the like holy shit
There's a
moment.
lot
Like,
there.
you have got a
Um,
lot to catch up on. Holy
hopefully,
shit.
hopefully you're enjoying it all.
Hopefully
I
you
say
understand it all.
as a I guess a little bit of a PSA for those unaware. At the time of this recording and release, Humble Bundle is currently selling all of Destiny, every
Nice.
expansion, everything. I think it's like $40.
That's a
Um,
fantastic price. I sat
so
down and thought about it the other day of like, hey, somebody's like, I want to get into Destiny, and it's like, well, do you want to get into Destiny or do you want to get into Destiny? Like
Yeah.
this, these are two totally different trains of thoughts. But yeah,
Yeah, so just as a shout out there for those unaware, it is PC only,
yeah,
unfortunately,
yep,
so
online
it
button.
doesn't apply to consoles. But if you joined with Lightfall and are really enjoying your time with it, and you want to experience some of the stuff that led up to Lightfall, that right now is the best deal to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm glad that we can help you with that journey from the lore side, though. The second shout out comes to us from Twitter. This one from Benji, who starts off with one word shout out: merchandising.
Merchandising. I am the great dawn of the underworld. Merchandising. I love that one. I
Uh,
freaking love Spider.
it's is best. It's one of our most memorable bits that everyone keeps bringing up, and I love
I
it.
love it. I freaking love
Uh,
it.
but they do continue and say, I listen to new episodes every week, and then I catch up on previous series when traveling. As you can tell, I've just finished History of the Elixni. An amazing duo. Keep up the great work. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all the history ones we're doing. Right now we're doing
Yeah.
something a little bit different that's like more recent history, and we're kind of like we have a lot more information to go off of what we're comparing, what we're reading versus what we can compare it to. But all those history ones of like to think through like what happened to all these different races and species throughout their history with the light and dark. Again, to finally be culminating in a few months with the final shape. It's yeah, I've been along for the ride since Taken King. I have to preface that the summer before Taken King, so I did have a little taste of what vanilla D1 was like. And I'm here for the long run. I'm on the Vex's side. I'm playing the long game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, say thank you to these two as well as everybody out there listening to us. If you like what you hear and you want to support us in some way, best thing you can do is leave a review on your platform of choice. Just however many stars is great. If you feel strongly enough and your platform allows it, if you want to leave a text review, we love seeing those. Otherwise, you can reach out on Twitter at Myths and Stories or email at mythsandstories@gmail.com. A new addition to all of this is we are now also releasing content on YouTube. Uh, we're kind of working through the backlog on YouTube until it catches up with current episodes, and then we'll be updated with everything else. But right now we've got our History of the Awoken and our Books of Sorrow on there. The next series going live will have already started to go live by the time this episode releases, is History of the Cabal. So speaking of those history series,
Yeah.
that is another one that's coming to YouTube for those that find that platform to be better for them.
Well,
But
cool.
but yeah.
Well, I guess I got to thank you. You know what? I'm going to thank the unsung, unspoken heroes. That's all the fur babies that everyone has. I myself have several. Let's see here. I've got Cade 6 and Saint 14. Those are my huskies. We've got Mara and Uldren Sov. Those are our two barn cats. We have Shiva and Squall. So Squall, Lionheart, and Shiva. Only because I couldn't. I tried to convince my lovely fire team member and wife that it should have been Renoa, or at least Ultimacia or Edia, but I couldn't convince her of that. So Shiva it is. But Shiva fits. And those are our two little munchkin cats. And then we have Zorashia Shalashaska, little baby Zori. That's my Bengal kitty. Yeah. So thank you all fur babies for keeping us sane, and those huskies that force me to clean the house on an hourly basis because they shed so god dang much.
Is a lot of fur to deal with, yeah.
That is. All right. Well, Myth, you got anything? Anything
No,
else?
that's it.
Alrighty. Well, then, from all of us Lord Daddies to all of you Guardians out there, we'll see you next time.
You found your people. Guardians do love their myths and stories.